Hey everybody, it's Terry, and I'm back with yet another new model. This time around, I have an electric ducted fan from E-flite. More specifically, this is a scale model of the A-10 Thunderbolt 2. I don't think anybody ever actually calls it the Thunderbolt 2. It's more commonly referred to as the Warthog, or sometimes just the Hog. But in any case, this is a very interesting model with some neat features that I think you'll want to see. So stick around and we'll crack it open. In many ways, the A-10 is an ideal scale subject for an electric ducted fan model. First of all, the fan units are mounted on pylons. This makes them easily accessible for inspection or maintenance or any other task that you may need to do with them. Also, the inlets to the fans are mounted above the wing. This makes them unlikely to ingest grass or pebbles or any other foreign objects that could be kicked up from the runway and damage the fan units. Also note the A-10's wing. First of all, it's relatively large for a jet, but also it has no sweep, and this tends to give A-10 models good low-speed handling characteristics in comparison to other jet models with itty-bitty swept wings. There are other A-10 models on the market that are comparable in size to this one, but what sets E-flite's model apart from the others is the power system. This model has two 64mm diameter fan units with 11-blade rotors. That part is not so special. What is special is that the motors in these fan units are configured to run on a 6-cell battery. Most fan units of this size top out at 4 cells, but moving up to 6 cells provides much greater potential to produce a lot of power, and that's exactly what happens here. These two fan units combined produce 1500 watts of power. That's 2 horsepower, and that is a tremendous amount of power for a model of this size. And the benefits of all that power will become apparent when we talk about the A-10's flight performance. Some other interesting features of this model are that it includes a full load of ordnance that can be installed or removed without any tools. Also, it has electric retracts that are made of metal components and have shock-absorbing oleo struts. This A-10 also includes functioning rudders with independent servos and operational wing flaps. The airframe components of the A-10 are made of molded foam, and it comes factory painted in this gray trim scheme. Most of the decals are factory applied as well. And when you factor in all of the moving control surfaces as well as the nose wheel steering, this model has 9 sub-micro digital servos. Of course, all of those servos are factory installed. And E-flite also thought to include a discrete battery eliminator circuit that powers all of those servos through the flight battery. Now, this is the bind and fly basic version of the model, which means it also includes a Spectrum-compatible receiver with AS3X and Safe Select stabilization. This model is mostly pre-built, so there's very little that you will need to do to get it ready for flight. One of the things that you do have to do is attach the tail feathers with CA adhesive, but all of those parts fit very well, so it's an easy job. The manual also instructs you to attach this pave penny pod to the fuselage with CA. I did that at first, but you'll notice that the pod sticks below the fuselage quite a bit, and I subsequently knocked the pod off accidentally. So rather than glue this back on, I decided to attach it with 3 pairs of neodymium magnets. The magnets hold the pod in place securely during flight, but they allow it to break loose without damage if it ever gets bumped. I am using the recommended battery in this model, which is a 6-cell 3200 mAh unit from Spectrum. The battery is held in the airframe with hook and loop tape on a plywood tray in the battery compartment. There's also a hook and loop strap that wraps around the battery. And as you can probably see, this battery is a tight fit in this compartment, and I've had the best luck by placing the battery fully against the starboard side of the compartment, and this leaves a gap on the port side that's just large enough to tuck in the wires in the battery connector. I think it is worth noting that this is not a lightweight airplane. My example weighs just over 5 pounds ready to fly, and that works out to a wing loading that's a bit higher than you would normally expect for this kind of model. But the good news here is that the numbers do not tell the whole story. This A-10 actually slows down quite well for partial throttle cruising around, and that's especially true when you drop the flaps down a notch. But what really surprised me is the effect when you drop the flaps down all the way. This model slows down a bunch and comes in for very manageable landings. I think that most sport pilots will have no trouble at all controlling this jet model. Previously, I talked about this model's surplus of power, and that extra power will become obvious as soon as you begin the takeoff roll. Now, I've been operating this airplane off of a grass field that's a bit rough in places and sometimes has tall grass, but this A-10 has enough power to just shove its way through all of that and get itself into the air. The shock-absorbing landing gear helps as well, but if you have access to a smooth runway, your takeoffs will be even easier. Once you are in the air, the power system provides a good blend of climb performance and speed. Vertical maneuvers and loops can be as tall as you want them to be, but I was really pleased by the all-out speed that this model is capable of. If your idea of fun when flying an A-10 model is to do a full throttle strafing pass followed by a wing-bending high-G pullout, well, then this model is not going to disappoint you. Of course, the trade-off for having all of that power on tap is flight time. The manual recommends setting your flight timer for 3.5 minutes, and that's what I've been following. And I found that leaves me enough reserve to go around if I need to, and I also have enough power to taxi off of the runway once I land. As you would expect, this A-10 does basic maneuvers like rolls and inverted flight quite easily. And with the dual rudders, it also does great knife-edge passes. And since those rudders are partially in the jet wash, it can do some maneuvers that you would not normally associate with a jet, such as wing overs and hammerheads. All in all, this is a very nimble and aerobatic ducted fan airplane. Unfortunately, the camouflage paint scheme on this model does its job quite well. So if you're flying on a cloudy or overcast day, visual orientation can become challenging, so just make sure that you keep your eyes glued to this thing whenever you're flying it. This concludes my overview of the A-10 Thunderbolt II from E-flite. Keep watching to see more flight footage. Also, be sure to check out the written review in Model Aviation magazine. Thanks for watching.